Welcome back to East Texas Now. Joined with us here this afternoon on the show, please welcome our guest, Natasha Daniels. She's an anxiety and OCD child therapist as well as author. Natasha, thanks so much for joining us here on East Texas Now.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so your title says you're an anxiety and OCD therapist. So can we first start talking about the differences between the two?
Yeah, they're actually very different. They happen in different parts of the brain. When you're anxious about a situation that maybe other people wouldn't find anxiety producing. When you have OCD, it's something completely separate. Something gets stuck. So you have an intrusive thought and then the need to do something to get that brief relief, which we call compulsions.
Fantastic. Now, I know that from what I'm reading here prior to the interview, it takes severely long to get that OCD diagnosis. Why do we think that it's such a complicated process?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. They just don't teach how to assess and treat OCD as much as they should in graduate programs. And so people with OCD are misdiagnosed with anxiety, ADHD, and other mental health issues. And it takes a specialist to really be able to spot it a lot of the time.
Now, tell us a little bit about anxiety. Is that easier to diagnose? Is it easier to see? Is it more just that it has more conversation, so it's top of the brain for people? Why is it so much easier to be diagnosed with anxiety than OCD?
Yeah, I think of like all the things you just said, for sure. Yeah, anxiety, it's very easy to spot. It's when people have to do things to get that brief relief where it's turning more into an OCD situation.
That makes sense. Now, from what I'm reading, it says that there's some helpful hints that you can have or helpful tools in your tool belt for anxiety that can actually worsen OCD symptoms. So if you accidentally get diagnosed or misdiagnosed with anxiety, you try to treat it when really it's OCD, it worsens the issues. What are those?
Yeah, with anxiety, it's really helpful to reframe the cognitive distortions to help someone see it from a different perspective, to problem solve. With OCD, when you do that, you can actually make OCD worse because they know rationally, I know I washed my hands 50 times, but I still feel the compulsion to do it. And so it can increase shame. And you might problem solve and say, well, just put some gloves on. And that's not helpful either.
Okay, so then let's dive into OCD a little bit since it's a lesser talked about one. Shed some light on it. What are some typical stereotypes of OCD that turns out aren't true?
Yeah, OCD has so many different disguises. So being a neat freak or, lining things up or being super organized, those are not necessarily OCD tendencies. There are themes that may look like that, but you can have a really messy house. You could be disorganized. You can be not neurotic and have OCD because it's just about having an intrusive thought and the need to do a compulsion to get that relief.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, you are a child therapist with, again, OCD and anxiety. I have a almost 3-year-old, and I am always trying to equip myself with tools to help should anything happen, right? So say, for argument's sake, my child does end up developing OCD in his childhood years. What are some things that me as a parent can help along, and what are some things that I might not know that are hurting his OCD?
Definitely educating yourself about what OCD is so you can kind of notice it because it shows up in a lot of different ways. And then educating your child. There are a lot of OCD children's books to educate them on a bossy brain and the need to do things. And then understanding what you're doing to add to the compulsions because parents get hooked into the compulsion. So we participate and complete that OCD loop.
Okay, so say we get, we have read the books, we have equipped ourselves with the information, we understand the tactics, we go to a doctor fairly confident, at least, of what it is, we get that diagnosis. What is the treatment that we can expect?
Typically, the most evidence-based approach for OCD in kids is ERP, which is a type of cognitive behavioral therapy, which stands for exposure response prevention.
Now, I'm reading that the average mental health professionals are not trained to treat OCD. So then where do we go?
Yeah, that is a big part of the problem. You can always go to the International OCD Foundation and look at their provider directory to start. You're looking for somebody who not only specializes in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but ERP, a type of CBT. And if they're not specializing in ERP, that would be a red flag for me that they may not have the expertise.
Now, how widely available is that? And what is, you said that that's a huge issue, that's a huge gap. So what is the solution that you see would benefit the most?
Yeah, that is the problem, is there is a gap. And so educating yourself, there are plenty of resources online, global communities that can help you arm yourself with knowledge to be able to help your kids directly. And that's a lot of what I do, is how can I get this information directly to parents?
So if you had one thing to say to the parents that are watching right now on East Texas Now, whether it be about their child's anxiety or their child's OCD, what is your message to them?
There's always hope, and no one needs to be isolated in doing this. There is a huge global community of parents just like you who are raising kids with anxiety or OCD, who are willing and ready to share their knowledge and get your back.
Fantastic. Now, Natasha, before we go, is there anything else that you want to make sure that we cover here in this chat that we haven't talked about already?
No, I appreciate you letting me help people see the difference between anxiety and OCD.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, Natasha Daniels, anxiety and OCD child therapist and author. Natasha, thanks for stopping by the East Texas Now desk.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.